You don't know Robert Lighthizer, but his influence with President Trump could change America's economy. Lighthizer was the top U.S. trade negotiator in the first Trump administration, and he's an evangelist for tariffs, taxes on imported goods. Yesterday, the president declared an emergency and imposed unusually high 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and 10% on China to coerce them to stop the flow of the deadly drug fentanyl. That's unusual because tariffs are normally used to balance trade. And in Lighthizer's opinion, America has little choice. He says China's 3-to-1 dominance in trade is a threat to our way of life.
The story will continue in a moment.
China, to me, is an existential threat to the United States. It is a very, very competent adversary. China views itself as number one in the world and wants to be that way. They view us as in the way. They have the biggest army in the world, and they're growing it, the biggest navy in the world, and they're growing it. They're spying on us. They're taking our technology. They've been waging an economic war against the United States and winning that war for at least the last 3 decades.
So your tariff regime for China would be what?
I believe in strategic decoupling. I'm not saying no economic relationship with China. That's not my position at all. I think you want balanced trade. And how do you get balanced trade? You're going to get balanced trade by having large tariffs on most of what they send to us.
What's large?
You know, the president has floated numbers 50, 60%, but I think they're big numbers like that.
Wait a minute, you're talking about decoupling from China. What would that look like?
So it is strategic decoupling. So we would still have trade. So I would say we sell you 150 billion, we buy 150 billion from you, no more. We don't allow investments in China except in circumstances where we believe that's in the interest of the United States. We don't allow inbound investment, so we begin to disentangle. We disentangle our technology. You can ask yourself, what is China's policy towards us? It is exactly a mirror image of what I just said. So what I'm suggesting we do to China is what they do to us.
Ronald Reagan gave the young trade lawyer his first White House job, and 77-year-old Bob Lighthizer has been advising Republicans since. In Trump's first term, Lighthizer was in charge of negotiating trade agreements. In Trump 2.0, he's an unofficial advisor, but a passionate one. We noticed when he apologized for chewing up time.
Just because I talk too much. So
it is 60 minutes after all, and we don't get all of it.
It's not 60 days. Is that what you're thinking?
It's not days, but centuries that tariffs have been debated. Every U.S. president has used them. But in the 1930s, tariffs deepened the Great Depression, and after World War II, America led a broken world toward free trade. U.S. manufacturing jobs were stable until around the year 2000. Then, in 10 years, a third of manufacturing jobs were lost, nearly 6 million. There was a modest rebound under Obama, Trump, and Biden. That dip is COVID. But fewer than 1.5 million jobs are back.
You don't know how much you love going to work until you can't go there anymore.
Stacey Dahl, Michelle Lopez, and Matt Franson are among 1,200 workers laid off in 2023 when the Belvidere, Illinois auto assembly plant shut down.
This is my home. And when they told me that we were done, it hurt. It really did.
We've got a community of 24,000 people, and there's probably not a street you can go down that somebody's not tied to this plant. We've been here since 1965. It's a good job, provides a great living, and we would just like to see it come back.
Come back from Mexico. In 2016, carmaker Stellantis moved one of Belvidere's Jeep models south of the border. In 2023, Belvidere closed.
We've lost electronics, we've lost textiles, we've lost chemicals in a large way. We invented the semiconductor. Now we make 8% of semiconductors for the world and none of the really high-tech ones. More than half of the cars sold in America are now imports.
Mexico, Canada, and China are America's largest trading partners. But China, Bob Lighthizer says, has an enormous advantage because of the trade imbalance and Chinese espionage, stealing U.S. trade secrets.
You add it all up, you can get to around $1 trillion a year of wealth from the United States being transferred to a geopolitical adversary. It's insane, and it's working. And then you ask yourself, as a national security issue, how do you fight a war if, God help us, we ever have a war with China, when they're now 4 times more likely to be able to produce what is needed in a war?
But isn't trade one of the ways we avoid a hot war?
The way you prevent wars is by having the strongest, biggest, best army, biggest, best navy, best economy in the world, best technology. You do those things, the allies come to you, they see you as the future.
Already, China's manufacturing sector is bigger than that of the United States, Germany, and Japan combined. Isn't China too big to snub?
We should never have that attitude. There are things we can do. The genius of America combined with our allies, we can turn this around. But what do we need? We need to change the relationship with them. We need tariffs. In my judgment, we need subsidies in certain areas, and we need an economic policy and a military strategic policy that rises up to the challenge.
Everyone will prosper, every family will thrive.
On the campaign, Trump proposed historic tariffs, 10 to 20% on all imports, 25% on Mexico and Canada, 60% on China. He said America would grow wealthy collecting taxes from overseas.
A tariff is a tax on a foreign country. That's the way it is, whether you like it or not. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's a tax on us. No. It's a tax on a foreign country. It's a tax on a country that's ripping us off and stealing our jobs.
But most any importer or economist will tell you the president is mistaken. Tariffs are not a tax on a foreign country. The tax is paid by the importer in the United States. For example, Walmart imports goods from China, and when those goods cross into the United States, Walmart pays the tariff. If Walmart decides to pass the cost to consumers, then you paid the tariff, not China.
So if you go to Walmart, if you go to Target, you're going to see higher prices for imported goods.
Economist Mary Lovely studied Trump's proposals for the Peterson Institute for International Economics, a leader in nonpartisan research. The argument is made that if tariffs are imposed, American consumers will buy less of the foreign goods, more domestically produced goods, and that's a great thing for consumers and for jobs.
Well, it's a great thing for consumers if you don't care about how much they are able to buy, because the prices of everything they buy will go up. Will they substitute toward domestic goods? Let's just take that to start. Yes, to some extent they will. But the prices of those domestic goods will also rise because they no longer have to compete with imported goods.
Lovely's research estimates the tariffs Trump talks about would cost an average household around $200 a month.
Footwear, toys, home goods, certain types of machinery, certain active ingredients in pharmaceuticals, certain types of chemicals. We're still very dependent in certain categories.
But worse, Lovely says, tariffs can kill jobs. She points to Trump's first-term tariffs on imported steel. As intended, steel prices rose, U.S. mills were protected, but the higher prices hurt steel buyers, like car makers. Economists estimate that the tariffs created 1,000 jobs in steel, but cost 75,000 jobs among U.S. companies overall.
This idea that it creates jobs, yes, in a few places for a few people, but for the majority of us, it's more pressure on employers, it's more pressure on our wages, it's more pressure on our jobs, and obviously more pressure on our wallets when we go to the cash register.
The argument is made that when you increase the cost of parts and supplies coming into the country, you're hurting Apple, you're hurting Ford, you're hurting American companies.
Will these very highly paid CEOs have to figure out how to make a profit in a new environment, one that helps workers and helps innovation and is more American focused, America first? The answer is yeah, they're going to have to figure it out. Will they figure it out? Of course they'll figure it out. They're going to learn how to make money.
One of the ways they figure it out is by laying people off.
Well, no, you see, I don't believe that's true. I think, to me, the exact opposite will happen. You will see more production in the United States. You will see more jobs, better jobs, more pressure, upward pressure on wages, which is my objective.
The way you paint it, it seems like tariffs are magic.
Well, I wouldn't say magic. So remember, the tariffs are part of an economic policy. The policy has tax cuts, it has spending cuts, it has energy production, it has regulatory reduction, and it has tariffs. The combination of that, I think, and tariffs are an important part of it, has the potential to have this kind of renaissance.
We saw some of that combination he talks about back in Belvedere, where turbocharged tariffs have been hitched to a big taxpayer investment. When you were putting that T-shirt on Joe Biden, did you think that's it, the plant's opening again? In 2023, Matt Franson, president of the UAW local, welcomed President Biden to Belvedere with a union shirt.
I thought we were well on our way. You know, Belvedere's always fought for themselves. And in this scenario, we needed everybody to fight for us, and they did.
Biden did. He increased Trump's earlier 25% tariff on Chinese cars to 100% for Chinese electric vehicles. Then Biden gave car maker Stellantis a $335 million grant to convert Belvedere to electric cars. We don't know how much that helped, but last month, Stellantis said it would reopen in 2027.
They need to realize that whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, we need to work on the middle class. If the middle class is strong, that helps so many different areas. So it's not just going to be the tariffs, it's got to be policy that's set for the middle class.
But tariffs cut both ways. Canada and Mexico now say they will retaliate against Trump's new tariffs with their own tariffs on U.S. goods, the opening shots of a trade war.
The real fear that I have is that we have real problems. And I'm afraid that tariffs, time and time again, proven to not deliver. So in the long run, I'm afraid it will just increase cynicism among the American public about whether the government is able to deliver and make their lives better.
What are the chances that you're wrong?
Well, once again, we tried it the other way, Scott. If we do this, in 10 years it doesn't work, we can go back and always fail again with the way we have in the past.